Jenna and Alex. I can't wait for everybody else's milestone shares because everybody has wound me up so far this afternoon. Welcome to the newcomers. I had a big sigh of relief when you all put your hands up because really it's all about you tonight. It's not about me or anybody else's opinion of me. It's really about you and you wanting to do something about your problem and letting you know that there's help, really. Sure, I'm nervous. That thing really doesn't help. So, what it was like, around milestones, I think, if I'm honest, I've probably rehearsed this 153 times in my head in the last hour, but it often just makes me really reflect and connect with what it used to be like, and I listened to a share a few weeks ago, and it was all about perception, and it was just so true about how our perception changes. And when I sat here for my 1 year share, my perception of what it was like was very different to what my perception is now of what it was like. For 27 years, I believed that I was a victim, that my life was as awful as it was because of my upbringing, because of how my mum was, because of how my dad has lived in Joburg for most of my life. I believe that I was a victim of that. I was a victim of all the bullies at school and of not being understood, and I was just a victim of the world. And today, when I look at what it was like, I can say that I come from a home, from a loving family who my mum just tried her best. My dad moved away to do what he had to do for us, to look after us. And all the other stuff was just my perception, really. And long before I used, all my behaviour was there. I was sitting chatting to my mum, and we were talking about behavioural stuff in the disease of addiction and everything else, and how alcohol and drugs weren't my problem. It was really just a symptom of everything else. And I said to her, I really remember a particular story at preschool where I had told my preschool teacher that we were moving, and I still remember, like in my head, kind of believing it, and this little fantasy of the house we were going to move into. And obviously when my mom came to fetch me from school, my teacher said, well, I heard you're moving, good luck for your move. And my mom was like, we're not moving. I had no reason to lie. I had no reason to tell that story, yet I did. And there were a whole lot of stories that I don't remember, but my mom remembers from primary school, of just these like unnecessary lies. Going into adulthood, like pointless stuff, like I've eaten strawberries for lunch and actually I had blueberries. Like no one really cares, there's no real point in it. I was just this compulsive liar. It was always just, if I look at what life was like, it was always miserable, hopeless. I believed that was what life was, and I just had to kind of get through it. My mom always used to say to me, from when I was young, probably standard 5, standard 6, she always used to say to me, why can't you just be normal and go to the movies or go to a friend's house for a sleepover? Why do you always have to do all these like hectic things? You've got to stop. Why, just be a normal child. I remember being so frustrated, and I remember saying to her and like believing she didn't quite get it, and I was like, but Mum, this is what normal children do. This is what normal people do. Well, yeah, in hindsight, I think she had a fair point. And later on, when I stopped, I don't know what I was going to say, sorry. Anyway, so I surrounded myself with people like me. I kind of just avoided people who weren't like me. So I guess it did become, it was just normal. Everyone accepted it, because if you didn't accept it, I wouldn't have you around. I've got a friend that I went to preschool with, and she said to me the one day, she was like, Jenna, you've got to stop this. Like, you've got to grow up. Can you not see that nobody else does this stuff anymore? Like, we've all had our party time and we've all done our thing. And, like, it's time to grow up. My response to that was, you're old before your time. You are losing out on life. This is not what life's about. You've got no idea what it's all about. You're missing out. I think part of me believed that, she was going to be, she was going to end up having a midlife crisis and end up doing all the same things anyway. But and then I had nothing to do with her. She was judgmental, and I didn't have time for judgmental people in my life. So I carried on doing what I was doing, and I just, in hindsight, all the people around me were all just as sick as me. I remember when I came into recovery, or just before I came into recovery, 4 of them were in the same treatment centre together. The next bunch are in there now. And someone said to me, oh, maybe you should change your friends. And I was like, well, they're all in recovery now. It's kind of not the real time to change friends now. But I became very close friends with somebody, and we, it was kind of, it became us against the world, and it was really because our behaviour was so similar. They ended up in a treatment centre where I went to visit every Sunday. And when I was there, I used to see these people that were so happy. They were happy. I hate using slogans, but I'm going to. They were happy, joyous, and free. They had this serenity about them. I remember sitting at a table with a bunch of them, and they were just so kind and content with who they were and what they were, where they were. And I remember one afternoon, like, crying on my way home, because I was like, I'm not surrounded by people like that. My life's fucking miserable. Sorry, flipping miserable. And it's and like I was like, and I don't have a problem, so I can't go book in there. And and I continued using it. It was when that friend and I actually lived together, and it was when he came home after treatment that I, for the first time, tried to stop using, and I couldn't. It became, I no longer had a drug of choice. I would kid myself and go, well, I don't have a problem with that because I can stop it, look. But I was doing something else. And then when I decided that was getting a bit too frequent, I'd go, oh, better stop that. So I would use something else. But living with somebody in recovery, every time like I traded things, I still had to hide it all. And it took me about 6 months after he came out of came out of treatment. He didn't have a car, so I used to drop him off at meetings, and because there was kind of an hour to spare, I'd often come and sit in these meetings. I sat as Jenna, the supporter, very proudly told everyone. And I think the more I tried to hide it, the worse everything got, and obviously everything progressed to a point where I realized I couldn't do it anymore. I remember my last binge, it was on a Saturday night. The Sunday, it started in Belito. I had to phone my flatmate to come and fetch me on Sunday morning from Maritzburg. I have no idea how I got there. And that Sunday, I remember thinking, I can't do this anymore. I'll wait. I don't know why I had to wait, but I thought I'll wait and I'll go to the meeting on Friday. I think I even said, can I come to the meeting with you on Friday? So typical Jenna, had to wait a whole week and put myself through all that. But anyway, so I went to a meeting, and in the preambles, they always say, try and identify, don't look at the differences. And up until that evening, all I'd done was look at the differences. I don't belong there because I never lost my house. I don't belong there because they've all lost their jobs. I never lost my job. I don't belong there because I never nearly died with a needle between my toes. I could always come up with all the reasons why I didn't belong here, until that night that I went to a meeting, and it's always such a reminder of that, don't look at the differences, because it was somebody's share he had in actual fact lived in a park for I don't know how long. He had lost everything. So we had so many differences, but for some reason that night I really did connect with the similarities, and I went home and I prayed, and I didn't know who I was praying to or what I was praying for. I just didn't want to be how I was anymore. I remember the first time I heard about all the God stuff with this program, and it was when I visited my flatmate in treatment for the first time, and he was most excited to tell me all about how he had found God. And my first thought was, don't react, but oh my gosh, there goes another friend. It's this God nonsense, it's this religious stuff, here we go. To my relief, in his next breath, he explained, and he was like, and Jenny, it doesn't have to be like a religious God. I can pray to the tree if I want to. And I was kind of like, okay, that's interesting. I wasn't sure. But that's something about this program that I've really loved, is that I've kind of, it's a higher power of your own understanding. It can be, I know mine has changed throughout my recovery, and it's been from simple nature to the universe as a whole to whatever. And I always say, if I believed in the God that I was brought up to believe in, that was a God with punishment, and, I would go to wherever, and there were always consequences, and every life was a test, and all that kind of stuff. And today, the God of my understanding isn't that at all. It's a loving, caring, higher power who, if that was all true, and it was all, I want to say conflicted, that's not the word I'm looking, no, consequences was the word I was looking for. And if it was all consequences, I sure as hell wouldn't be here. Anyway, so that night I got on my knees, and I didn't know what I was praying to yet, but yeah. The next day, I I got hold of one of the women in the fellowship. I always say I was incredibly lucky in that. I had got to know quite a few members of this fellowship before I was officially in it. So, that moment where I knew I'd had enough and I knew that something needed to change, I knew exactly who to go to. And I remember phoning, again, I'd waited the whole day to phone her, and I phoned her on a Saturday afternoon. And I just cried, like I couldn't really get much out. And I remember saying, I don't think I'm much of a supporter, but I think I've got a problem. And I had so much fear, because I was like, I've walked around and I've become friends with these people and I've built relationships with these people. But in essence, all I've done is lie to them. Like it's all been a lie. It's, how am I going to now tell them that actually? So I'm not really a supporter. But anyway, the first experience of that on that phone call was nothing but love. I always get super emotional when I tell this part of the story, because it was so incredible how kind and patient she was. And well, okay, like she had no reaction. She was like, okay, do you want to go to a meeting this afternoon? I'll meet you there. And she sent me the address, and off I went. I remember my first meeting. I sat and cried my whole meeting, and it was because I was terrified, but because I was so afraid of what everyone outside would think, what my family would say. I'd kept a lot undercover with my family. I just didn't see them very often. To the point where, to this day, my mom she still believes that I think it might be a bit of denial in there too. She still believes that I'm not an addict. Her reaction to, Mom, I've got a problem and I'm going to NA for help, was, well, I think you're just bipolar. And she suggested medication for that. And her next sentence was, but as long as it doesn't cost you anything and you don't hang out with people who have done drugs, okay, do whatever you have to. And I've never really fought that, and I've never sat down and told her what's all gone on, just because I believe, there's no dishonest motives in it. I just believe that it would be for selfish reasons. So that she'd understand me and accept me, and, well, she'd probably fall over with heart failure. So it's kind of just something where slowly she goes through phases of accepting it a little bit more, and we can chat about it, and then she goes through phases where she doesn't agree. But what I've learned is it really doesn't matter who agrees or who doesn't agree with what I'm doing or what I have to do. I've done it, and it's kept me clean for 3 years. So something must be right in what I'm doing. Sure, I got very sidetracked in my own story. My first year of recovery was very recovery. I did 90 meetings in 90 days. The last few I did miss because I went to my sister's wedding in the UK. But I kind of doubled up on meetings before that. So on Saturdays I'd go to 2 meetings or whatever to try and get those in. But and I got stuck into the fellowship. Like, I didn't do much that wasn't NA related in the beginning of my recovery. Because all of a sudden, like, I remember in the first few months meeting up with a friend of mine who had been friends for years. And I met up for coffee with her, and I had nothing in common with her anymore, at all. It was all about the next man to chase, the party the night before, and how to get out of shit because she had missed work. and I was like, wow, that is what our friendship was based on. And we we say hi every now and again, but we really don't have much in common at all. So it hasn't been I remember thinking when they said I had to, change people I hang around with, I used to get quite defensive and be like, but those are my family, My friends are closer to me than my family. Well, I tell you what, I haven't heard from half of them since I came into recovery. My second year of recovery, my second year was hard. It was good, but it was hard. My disease came out in a lot of my food stuff, and I really had to learn to work my program in all aspects of my life. I found myself doing the exact same behavior that I did around drugs, around food. A box of Cook Sisters, I'll never forget. Woolworths Cook Sisters, I'd kind of eaten them all, and before my partner came home, I thought, shit, I better replace those because he's going to notice. And it was the day before payday or 2 days before payday, and I'd phoned my mom, manipulated her out of $40 to go and replace the Cook Sisters, and I was like, oh dear, we have a problem. So, but with working really closely with my sponsor, I feel like I found the balance with that stuff, and year 3, sorry, I've got sidetracked now. Year 3 has been all about finding that balance with everything. This last week I've had, it was actually quite amazing this last week, because it was kind of my coming into recovery in a nutshell, but it was all around work stuff. I'd had a nightmare thing with my boss. There'd been chaos. I got to that feeling of going, oh my gosh, there's no hope here at all, none. God, there's meant to be God, well, where's he now? And anyway, for me it was just like a little rock bottom within my recovery, and I ended up having a long conversation with my sponsor, and I've got really stuck into doing meetings, and I've been speaking to my sponsor every day, and I've been, really trying to work steps in it, and all of a sudden I've had so many God moments. Like, I guess it's all the perception stuff again, where all of a sudden it's just been one thing after the next that I've gone, oh, there God is, yeah, he's here, in my second year, it was just after my 1 year milestone. In my first year, I'm trying to avoid sharing it, which means I should probably share it. My first year, I didn't follow a suggestion about getting into a relationship. And I got into a relationship, I believed everyone was wrong. I told everybody how we had known each other for 10 years. It was going to be very different to anything they had ever heard of or seen. We were going to be that couple. 3 months later, we were definitely not that couple. I had learned all sorts about myself very quickly, including the fact that I was an incredibly selfish person, because I hung on to that relationship for all the wrong reasons, and I hurt somebody. And the reality is, until the end of that relationship, until I'd had enough, I really didn't care. And that's only obvious to me now. But so that was very short-lived, and a not so happy experience. And I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. Just after my 1 year milestone, I started chatting with a gentleman, and he, I mentioned to my sponsor that we had probably been chatting a little bit more than just service. And yeah, we got into a relationship, and we're still in a relationship today. 2 years later, it's the longest relationship I've ever been in. But it's also the healthiest relationship. Like today, I know who I am. We sometimes, I think, give each other a lot of growth. but you know, the arguments we have today are really just because we both know who we are, and we're honest about it, and sometimes that clashes a little bit. but at the end of the day, it's a healthy relationship, and it's a real relationship, and it's, you know, it's not, I feel like it's not back in the bum later, but I try really hard to make it about him and not me, and it's not all about Jenna. And yeah, we've moved in together this year, end of last year, and all that stuff was hard, you know. That I just shared last week. I remember. Well, I've recently been sending my CV out. So on my cover page of my CV, like the first line used to be, I'm a dynamic individual, and something about embracing change. And well, if moving down here in with another human being has shown me that that was a complete and utter lie. So I've had to change my cover letter to my CV because we now live honestly. But yeah, what I've learned is to reach out. And this fellowship, I've always seemed to have sponsors that aren't often available. Always from day one. And what that's taught me to do is to reach out. I remember in my first 30 days, I had a morning where I lived across the road from a pharmacy, and I knew without a doubt if I walked out my door I was going to use, and I didn't want to. And I sat with it for a bit, and I cried hysterically. I was unable to get hold of my sponsor, and like I said, I was very lucky in that I had been in contact with a lot of people already, but I literally, and everyone's numbers were on my phone, saved under like Natalie NA, Candace NA. So I literally went down my NA list and I phoned every person and nobody answered. And I remember feeling so let down, really, and going, well, this NA fellowship, they all told me to phone in. Well, you know, but there's my selfishness again. Like, everyone's sitting waiting for me to phone. Anyway, eventually somebody answered their phone and they said to me, well, you don't need to go into the pharmacy. Speak to me while you drive past it, and come for coffee instead. And that's what I did. And that day I didn't have to use. Like, I remember crying all the way there, and I get very emotional because that's what this fellowship's about. Like, I never have to use again if I just use the tools around me. And yeah, later that day, once I was then okay, everybody phoned back, and I had to tell. Look, I only had about 10 people on that list at the time, but I had to tell about 10 people why I had phoned a few times that morning, and it was amazing. And the more vulnerable I got with people, the more vulnerable they got with me, and that's how my friendships grew. Yeah. I was going to tell you another story and I've forgotten. I don't know. Yeah, I think I might leave it there because I'm going to end up waffling. So thank you to everyone for being here. To the newcomers, keep coming back. If today made no sense to you, it doesn't matter. Come back until it does, because can't quite wrap your head around the addict thing, pop in as a supporter, it works. Thanks for letting me share.